Yo, what's going on, y'all? It's Cone back here again today with another episode of After the Buzzer, the show where I recap the NBA games from the night. You might be able to hear it in my voice. I'm really sick at the moment. That's why there were no videos over the past couple of days. It's a struggle, so if my voice sounds weird, if there's voice cracks, if there's random cuts because I have to take a coughing break, just to let you know that that's what's going on, just to be transparent. This is my flu game of recaps, but we did have Game 3 of the NBA Finals, so you know I have to go ahead and talk about that. And it was a fun one, particularly for the first half. It was really back and forth. In the second half, it wasn't quite as close, but there was still a lot of things to go ahead and get into. The first games were fun, particularly Game 2 was a classic. It came all the way down to the wire. Jamal Murray missed a three right there at the buzzer to try and send the game to overtime, but Miami ends up stealing it in Denver, becoming the first team to do so in these playoffs, and showing that they just really never say die. After Game 1, where the Nuggets looked pretty dominant at times, a lot of people were saying this was going to be a sweep, that the Heat didn't have a chance, but they showed in Game 2 why they continue to prove people wrong. They can have these crazy three-point shooting nights. They can lock up defensively. Erik Spoelstra's a fantastic coach. This is just a good all-around squad that has really earned their spot in these NBA Finals. And being tied 1-1 going back to Miami is a perfect scenario. They were never going to win both in Denver, so this is really all that Heat fans could ask for, and they had a shot to go ahead and win this game. But it did feel like it was going to take a lot, because it took a lot for the Heat to scrape by that win in Game 2. It took a ridiculous shooting performance. It took some big clutch time heroics, some great adjustments from Erik Spoelstra, and you knew the Nuggets were not going to back down from this challenge, even though the Heat crowd was absolutely bumping, and the Nuggets did exactly that. They didn't back down from this challenge whatsoever. It was close in the first half. We saw Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic battle Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo, utilizing that two-man game between Murray and Jokic that is so lethal. Miami tried a couple of different looks to slow Denver down, but ultimately nothing was working when Jokic and Jamal Murray or running a pick and roll or some kind of two-man game, a dribble handoff, whatever. There was nothing the Heat could really do, and they were going at the Heat's probably best two defenders in Bam Adebayo and Jimmy Butler, who were guarding the other two stars. It's just really hard to stop this Nuggets offense when those two guys get going. And because of that, which continued into the third quarter and beyond, because the Heat weren't getting ridiculous three-point shooting, because Jimmy Butler, who was fine in this game, wasn't putting up a heroic effort, by the end of the third quarter, the Heat were down, I think, by around 20 points, or at least they were at one point in that third period. In the fourth quarter, the Heat made a bit of a comeback, but it really was never enough, and Denver ends up winning this game by 15 points in Miami to take a 2-1 series lead. It's a statement win for the Nuggets, showing what they're capable of, showing that they can dominate even in Miami, and kind of just a showcase of how talented some of the guys on this roster are, which just might be something that's too hard for the Heat to really overcome. Again, it really was the story of Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic in this game, and I want to start with talking about Jamal Murray, who has been so lights out in these playoffs and in these finals, in the conference finals. Really, if you put Jamal Murray in the playoffs, he's going to perform. We saw it back in 2020 with that run that the Nuggets had to the Western Conference Finals, his duel in that series against Donovan Mitchell and the Jazz. He was phenomenal in that, putting up 50 pieces on ridiculous efficiency. We're seeing it again now in the conference finals. He had 30 points per game on 50, 40, 90 splits. Again, a 30-point triple-double in tonight's finals game, which there's only been 8 of those in finals history, and 2 of them happened tonight between him and Nikola Jokic, who we'll talk about in a bit. But yeah, Jamal Murray has just been phenomenal. In this game, his overall stat line was 34 points, 10 boards, 10 assists. He shot 12 of 22 from the field, 3 of 6 from deep. He did have 7 turnovers, and obviously you want him to cut down on those, but overall he was by far a net positive in this game. He was phenomenal. Just the ridiculous, tough shot making that Jamal Murray showcases every time he gets to the playoffs. It's unreal. Like, some of the shots that he knocks down, whether it's off the dribble, it's dribble handoffs, it's these crazy finishes at the rim. He does a bit of everything. His burst, his athleticism is also there. His playmaking has been great in these finals too. He's had 10 assists in all 3 of his finals games so far. It really just feels like he is one of those guys that is built for these moments. You put him on the brightest stage and Jamal Murray is going to perform. He's the perfect guard to have alongside a guy like Nikola Jokic, because Joker can get him the ball if he's being doubled, and Jamal Murray's going to make something happen, especially with playmaking like this. And part of it is because he's such a dangerous scorer that teams have to send a lot of pressure at him, which opens up opportunities for him to find teammates, work with Nikola Jokic, who is just a ridiculous pick and roll partner to have. It's really fun to watch these guys operate. And again, Jamal Murray continues to make statements in the NBA playoffs. It's what he's done basically his entire career. he's really just on another level right now. And when him and Jokic are playing like this, there's really not much you can do, because while Jamal Murray was having a ridiculous game in his own right, Nikola Jokic was reminding the world why he's the best player in the world right now and putting up a stat line that we have never seen in the NBA Finals. He had 32 points, 21 rebounds, 10 assists, 2 blocks, 57.1% shooting. He's the first player in NBA history to put up a 30-point, 20-rebound, 10-assist triple-double in the finals. It's absurd, and he did it on great efficiency and a blowout win. He's just amazing, and he did it also against Bam Adebayo, one of the best big man defenders in the league. He punished a lot of switches in this game too, which I really like about Jokic's game. Whenever there's a smaller defender on him, Jokic is going to immediately take advantage. He's going to demand the ball, which is also a credit to his teammates and the system that Michael Malone has set up, where they recognize that if their best player has a mismatch, they've got to get him the ball. And if they send a double, his playmaking is going to rip you apart, or he's just going to shoot right over the double. If you don't send two guys, he's going to make you pay on the mismatch every time. Even if you send your best defender at him, like Bam Adebayo, there's really not much you can do. He's dominated him so far in these finals. He's dominated Anthony Davis. There really is no answer for Nikola Jokic, who again is the best player in the world. I've said this a lot in my recent videos. I think I'm going to title this video something along the lines of Nikola Jokic is the best player in the world. I think it's an opinion that most NBA fans have at this point. I don't know how one could have watched what he's done so far in these playoffs and in these NBA finals against some ridiculous competition and not say that Jokic is probably the best in the world. There are a couple players that I'm sure people are going to make arguments for in the comment section below, and I'll hear some arguments, but to me, it's pretty firmly the Joker at this point. Through the first 3 games of the NBA Finals, his first ever NBA Finals, keep that in mind, he's averaging 33.3 points per game, 14 boards, 9.3 assists. He's shooting 61.5% from 2, 45% from 3, 85.7% from the line. Again, the first 30-20-10 game in finals history, which when asked about it after the game, he said, "I don't really care." It's ridiculous. Like, this is stuff that doesn't feel like it should be possible. He's the best passing big man of all time. He's arguably the best scorer in the league right now. I would say he's pretty firmly the best offensive player in the world. He might be the best rebounder in the world. He just does so many things to on an elite to impossibly great level. It's ridiculous. I just can't believe what I'm watching on a nightly basis with this guy. The guy who was drafted during the Taco Bell commercial, the guy that was a 2nd overall pick, is the best player in the world right now. He's dominating on the NBA Finals stage, and it's a joy to watch. I'll never forgive the people who years ago, when Jokic won his 2 MVP awards, were saying that he was the worst MVP to ever win the award, that he didn't deserve it. There were a lot of people saying that Jokic was not a deserving MVP winner the past couple of years because he wasn't having major success in the NBA playoffs, which was by far due to the fact that his teammates were dealing with injuries. Now that they're fully healthy again, you see what he's capable of when he's got some solid teammates. And even then, like Michael Porter Jr., who's supposed to be the 3rd best player on this team, has really not shown up whatsoever to these NBA Finals tonight. He again really struggled. He put up 2 points on 1 of 7 shooting. Like, he has not been a factor in these finals whatsoever. It's mainly been Jokic, Jamal Murray with a hint of Aaron Gordon, and also Christian Braun, who we'll talk about in a second. But yet the Nuggets have looked comfortably better in these finals up to this point. And he does it in such hilarious ways. Like, Jokic will knock down these shots where you've played perfect defense. There are so many possessions where Bam Adebayo will play legitimately perfect defense on Nikola Jokic. Like, I don't think you could do anything better. And he just knocks down these crazy little flip shots, these floaters. He's like fading away and he's shooting like way over his right shoulder, like from behind. It's the most awkward angle you've ever seen, and he still knocks it down. He will kind of jab step a couple times in the mid-range, shoot right over you, knocks it down. It feels like he's never missed a mid-range jumper in his entire life. It's just absurd. And he's one of those players where sometimes he'll do stuff that just makes you laugh because it feels ridiculous. He especially does that with some of his passes. There's just really no answer for Nikola Jokic. I don't think there's anybody in the world that can legitimately stop him at this point. I don't know if there's a defense in the world that can slow him down. He's just an absolute force of nature. It's been a joy to watch him in these playoffs and watch him dominate in the NBA Finals, proving a lot of those narratives that I was talking about earlier wrong, and showcasing one more time why Nikola Jokic is the best player on the planet. One more shout out I want to give for the Nuggets before we go over to Miami is to Christian Braun, who I mentioned a bit earlier. He was so good in this game. He finished with 15 points, 7 of 8 shooting. He had 4 rebounds. He got a steal, a dime. His hustle plays are infectious to this team. It feels like every time Christian Braun comes in, he gives 110%. He's out there running up and down the court, playing some solid defense, knocking down shots. He was almost single-handedly busting open the Miami zone at some points in this game because he's really solid as a downhill driver. He was slashing to the basket, finishing over Jimmy Butler through contact. He's a rookie, and they're going to need him to do this not just in this series, but also going forward in the next few years for this team, because Bruce Brown is probably going to be out of the Nuggets' price range in this upcoming free agency, so they need really solid role players, and getting guys like Christian Braun, who are on rookie deals and can produce right away, is really important to helping teams sustain these long runs of success. He's been amazing at points in these NBA Finals. This was his best game so far, and to do this as a rookie in Miami, the first road game of the NBA Finals, it's really impressive. Now we can go ahead and flash over to Miami, where really the story is the three-point shooting. If they're knocking down their threes, they look really hard to beat. If they're not hitting their threes, they're very vulnerable. And tonight was one of those nights where the Heat weren't knocking down their shots. They shot just 31.4% from deep, 37% from the field. Jimmy Butler was good. He had 28 points. He shot just under 50% from the field. But on a night where the Heat aren't knocking down their threes consistently, that's just not going to be enough. If they're not knocking down those long shots, they need Jimmy Butler to be absolutely dominant, which, dealing with his ankle injury and just the fatigue probably from over the course of this run, I don't know if Jimmy Butler is capable of those performances at this point. He very visibly got passive, I think, in the fourth quarter in particular, where he took just 2 shots in that entire period. He played about 7.5 minutes before he ended up getting benched down the stretch, and the Heat were down by a significant margin during that time, and he was deferring for some good shots. Like, it wasn't like he was getting wide open looks and deferring, but it was pretty clear that he got somewhat passive. And again, I don't know if that's because of fatigue, if it's just a mindset thing that he's trying to get his teammates going, if it's because of the ankle injury, I'm not really sure. But they're going to need more from Jimmy Butler, I think, to stay consistent in the series. The three-point shooting is a big variable, which is usually the case for teams that live and die by the three. But the Heat are very vulnerable to cold stretches. We saw it for basically an entire series against the Knicks, and sure, they won that matchup, but Denver's just too good. The Heat cannot sustain these long periods of not knocking down their threes if they're not getting a lot from Jimmy Butler and some of the other guys on this roster. Bam in this game had 22 points and 17 boards, playing some really solid defense as well, but he shot just 7 of 21 from the field in this game after having a couple of really efficient, aggressive performances in the first couple of games. He was again aggressive, but those shots weren't quite falling in this game. They were living with a lot of his mid-range jumpers, and unlike the first 2 matchups, those shots were just not going down. If he's not producing at a high level, if the threes aren't falling, if Jimmy's not doing heroic things, they're not going to win these games. It was just not the best performance from Miami. They're going to need a lot more going forward, particularly from guys like Gabe Vincent, who got into some early foul trouble, but overall in the game was just not very good. He shot 2 of 10 from the field, 1 of 6 from deep. Max Strus was 1 of 4 from 3 after last game, bouncing back from an 0 of 9 shooting performance from deep in game 1, so he's been very hit or miss so far. Caleb Martin finally showed up for a little bit in this game after struggling the first 2 finals games, but it wasn't anything crazy. He had 10 points, 2 of 5 shooting from deep. Again, it was a solid stretch for a bit, but overall he just was not as impactful as he was in the conference finals. For some reason in this game, Duncan Robinson only played 14 minutes, and I feel like he has to play significantly more in this series. When he's out there on the court, the Heat's offense looks way better than it typically does. His three-point shooting is huge. I mean, he's been great attacking off the dribble, playmaking for others. I feel like he was incredibly valuable in the first couple games of this series, so I don't know why he only played 14 minutes in this game. Maybe Eric Spoelstra just wanted to try some other matchups, didn't quite like what he was seeing from him at times. But I feel like the Heat really could have benefited from what Duncan Robinson brings to the table in this game. Maybe he'll get more minutes going forward, but I feel like that's kind of a necessity. You need someone out there who can knock down shots and help raise your offensive floor against a high-powered team like the Denver Nuggets, and I don't think playing Duncan Robinson 14 minutes is sustainable. So yeah, overall takeaway is that the Nuggets very clearly look like the better team here. They're just more consistent. They've got a lot more room for error than Miami does. If the Heat don't bounce back in a big way next game, I think this series is going to be over pretty quickly, but it is the Miami Heat. I'm not counting them out whatsoever. They've been doing this, battling against all the odds this entire playoff run. Hopefully Jimmy comes out with a big performance next game and we get a closer matchup. But for now, those are my biggest takeaways from this game. Let me know in the comment section below what your your biggest takeaways were, and also who you have winning the next matchup. Who's your finals MVP up to this point? I think it's pretty clearly Nikola Jokic, but I'd love to hear if any of y'all have any other opinions. Maybe you're leaning Jamal Murray. Let me know down below. I appreciate y'all watching. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed. I'll see y'all later. Real one, say it back.